My name's Chris Moore, class of 1981, and Scrum captain number 8.
Dennis Haylon, 1981, I played prop.
Pat Mckeon, again class of 1981. I was treasurer in 81, and I played a combination of center and wing.
I joined early in my freshman year, probably first or second week of September. Barney and I think joined at the same time, and there was flyers up around the campus center, so I really didn't know what to expect. But what really got me was the first practice there, the openness of the upperclassmen to teach me a sport I knew nothing about, and a sport that after the first practice, the first contact, I was hooked on. I loved the aspect of tackling, running, and I really enjoyed the meeting more people than in my dorm. I was Regis dorm in rugby, crossed all lines. There were no cliques. I met different people in all the dorms in the upper class and lived on the beach, and it just opened up an amazing, tremendous 4 years for me.
Yeah, we went down to the first practice. There was myself and Chris and a couple guys in our class there, and that was it. And the first thing I noticed is it looked kind of ragtag. So I thought, well, maybe we're just going to be running around like a herd all day. But I was amazed at how quickly it became organized and how the upperclassmen ran the practice very organized. And so I just loved the game right from there.
I actually didn't play my freshman year. I didn't go to the first practice that these guys went to. I joined as a sophomore. We all lived on Regis 2 together, and you know, these folks brought me down to one of the parties, like in the latter part of the spring of my freshman year, and saw, you know, sort of social side of the sport, to say the least. I go, you know, I got to get involved in this, you know, and you know, I used to run in high school, so I was always, you know, fairly confident I could run, and you know, my first practice, which would have been, you know, my first semester sophomore year, didn't know a thing. But you know, everybody pulled me aside, and you know, they recognized that I could run. I go, all right, I want to put you more on the outside, and I just started teaching you the game. I mean, and you know, it was you know, played mostly C's for first semester, you know, little B's in the second semester, and kind of progressed from there. But what I really liked about it was an incredible amount of mentoring. You know, it wasn't, you know, hierarchical. There was as many seniors playing C's as there were freshmen, you know. So it was good, and you know, really added tremendous amount of value to my Fairfield experience.
I agree with what Pat was saying. That it meant so much to me that it was the students running this highly successful program. We must have, right, 55, 60 players, no adult supervision, started on time, ran the drills, incorporated new players, and everybody was very aware of, and it crossed the lines, and Pat would pass it on to other players. When somebody new came out, make sure you engage them, welcome them, don't let them be on their own. And what was important to me was that I'd have friends say go to other colleges, and the upperclassmen, the routine was to, you know, be mean to the freshmen, or they had to do this pledge, and I was not into any of that crap, and was totally opposite of Fairfield. The seniors were the nicest to the freshmen. And then when we became seniors, right, we passed it on. The freshmen were invited to our beach house. We told them what courses to take, not take. You know what I mean? It was totally the opposite experience I heard from other schools.
Very approachable. And what was good is everybody I played rugby with at Fairfield throughout my 3-year career was a good athlete. You know, everybody played some athletics in high school. You know, and it really wasn't, you know, not everybody was a football player. I mean, I ran in high school. Some guys played football or soccer, but, you know, those skills translated quite well into rugby. You know, with the mentoring and everything, we really put out some really high quality sides that were incredibly competitive for a group of people that frankly had only been playing for, you know, less than a year and a half at the time.
And it was individual too. I remember Tom Quigley teaching me how to play prop, and then a few years later I taught Mike Kelleher how to play prop. And all the things you had learned playing and practicing with the people who were juniors and seniors translated into what you did 4 years down the road. Well, it's interesting that, again, you have a bunch of 22-year-olds teaching a whole group of younger people how to do something. That just translates perfectly into what you're going to do in your professional life. And you know, you wanted to take a leadership role as you grew older within the club. I mean, some people didn't, but most of us three specifically, you know, we wanted to become leaders on the team, and there's no way it wouldn't help you later on. You know, it definitely did.
Yeah, I think, and at least for my professional career, a lot of it is driven by your ability to be a quality networker, and this organization is an excellent network. I mean, I went to Europe with a friend of mine, Scotty Fredrickson, for the World Cup of Rugby. Okay, we're walking out of Cardiff after the opening ceremony in the first game. We bumped into a couple of guys on the ramp, and within a half an hour, we were in their clubhouse, drinking their beer, singing their songs, and they put us up for the night. You know, we didn't, you know, we were planning on going back to London after the game. We ended up getting so drunk we couldn't go anywhere, and we ended up crashing there. And that was, you know, what made all that happen, you know, just the common affinity that you have for other rugby players that you come across. You know, your opponents, other teams. You know, you go to, I don't know whether it's still there, but if you went to the bar called the Mad Hatter down in New York, you pretty much were very conversational with everybody in the place within about 30 seconds. You know, it was that kind of place, and it attracted, you know, kind of a rugby crowd. And, you know, that translates well when you cold call people and really trying to, you know, build a business.
Well, I related to, what I do in sales management. If I have 10 salespeople on my team, what I learned from rugby is it's not all about the first team. The strength of our club is to engage the C players to move up to B, and it correlates into tracking and motivating, and it works into a business life in that it's easy to spend all the time with the top tier, but the strength of any team is to have people in the lower tiers move to the middle tier, and rugby was very important of that. And you know, I'm sure we'll get into it, but on selections was check your friendships at the door. There's no clicks, and
yeah, we all wanted to win.
Yeah,
I mean, that was it.
But
you can't let, you know, your feelings get involved when you want to win. They're too different.
You wanted every side to win. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't just about the A side winning the game, and that was a successful weekend if the other two lost. I mean,
the big thing, like Pat's saying, was that, okay, the A game be played, but we were watching, making sure that all the players stayed for all 3 games. If we had, we'd have ABC, and right, we would call somebody on the carpet if they played their game and left. It's not all about that. You gotta watch all the games, clean up the field, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd ref the C game or whatever, but we were taught and we passed it on that the strength of our team. When we were there, it was 3 teams. I know other years they had
some D sides on occasion.
Sometimes.
I mean, you know,
We had, our peak was our senior year in the spring. We had 90 guys go out. That was, and I don't know, you know, we did a 1.5 mile run to warm up. Maybe 30 of them went back to the dorms halfway through the run, but we started out with 90 and ended up with, I don't know, maybe 60 or so on the team. We were very strong our senior year, a number of people playing. We used to get people to come out to the games. We used to get good crowds. And again, I think as you interview down the road, you're going to find that you know, the party atmosphere became more and more restrictive, but it was pretty open when we were playing, when we were at Fairfield. So, you know, if there's a keg on the field, you know, all these things sort of drew people to the game. And that's what made us popular. And, you know, just the fact that it was a fun sport to watch, too.
Yeah, I think that, well, it was a perfect thing to do on a Saturday afternoon in the fall. If you weren't playing, it was a great spectator sport. There wasn't much going on. The club standing as it related to the student body population, I thought was excellent. I mean, there was nothing. I mean, there was always a little bit of tension between the administration and, I mean, I was a treasurer that year, so always had the honor and privilege of going over to the athletic office on Monday morning and presenting the spend for the weekend, which was, usually about $1,000 in oranges and a bunch of Band-Aids. But I mean, it was kind of a kabuki dance you would do with the athletic department because they couldn't sanction, some of the.
Well, the oranges tasted a lot like Budweiser.
Yeah, the oranges
interestingly enough.
had an interesting flavor to them, but we did actually use oranges too,
Yeah.
but not as many as were ever reported.
It was always like on a banana peel, like freshman year, the club had just come off a double secret 1-year suspension, remember?
Yeah.
So it was like, why, we were kind of wondering, why are they walking on eggshells?
Yeah.
Why can't we have a beer? No, we just got back, we were banned for a year. So,
that was
70, fall of 77.
77.
And then as our year, we had our stories and Pat was our counselor. I remember one week he had to, besides talking to Vice President of Affairs, Finance, I think he also represented us in front of an Attorney General, an FBI agent.
It was an
And
interesting
so
day.
the hijinks went on and somehow Pat got us through these things and he passed it on to the next guard.
Yeah. No, really, basically, there's always been a little level of tension between the administration. It runs in degrees. One of the real quality attributes of the club is it has had in its history probationary issues where they've been suspended from play for periods of time, and yet they've always survived it. And look, some of these things were well-deserved punishments, and there are others that probably were completely blown out of proportion. But at the end of the day, at least in our era, 1959 was a great year to be born because they lowered the drinking age to 18 in New Jersey when I was 17. We didn't have to register for the draft.
Right.
And,
floor parties.
the floor parties
Great
were,
alcohol parties.
So, today's challenges, I think, around the social aspects of the game are more difficult than we had, frankly, because, I didn't check IDs at the door, but pretty much everybody who was a freshman at Fairfield was 18 years old, and I have to worry about it. I think the only time we had to worry about it at a party is when we hosted that English high school team, and they brought all their girlfriends and everything, and, I got 15-year-old girls running around my house, and that was like, we got to keep an eye on this. But other than that, didn't really. Today is a different world when it comes to that.
The thing that used to intrigue me is like Pat would present our case and he was always very eloquent, had the accounting sheet, but sometimes he'd come back for the meetings and it'd be like he had to sell his heart out to keep our pittance we would get. Let's just say $3,000 for 60 players, right? And at the same meeting, the fencing club with 9 players would get the same $3,000.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how the school would stick it to us all the time, but they couldn't beat us, right?
No.
We
No.
never missed a beat, but the contribution the school made over our 4 years was minimal, right, Pat?
Yeah, I'd say that for every, athletic club dollar that a student was required to pay. I always looked at basic fairness would be, all right, if you have 60 members of the rugby club, then their athletic rugby should go to the club, and it never worked that way. We used to have back and forth a lot about that. At the end of the day, we got enough money to survive. We did have a dues payment program. It was about $35, I think, a semester or something like that, which wasn't, one of the things we do. You could be smart about things. I don't know whether that liquor store we used to buy the kegs from is around anymore, but we would get down there and say, look, I can guarantee we're going to buy 100 barrels from you in 3 months. Now, do you want the business or not? And I'm not going to pay full price for that. And they're always ready to wheel and deal. So he did those things. Because generally, you had the rugby kegs, the official rugby spend, and then you had individual membership spend, and we all just try to push in this guy's direction. So
Pat always educated us on the art of commerce. It's tremendous.
Try to anyway.
We did pretty well. One of the things we tried to do was schedule schools that we knew had a tradition with: Holy Cross, Boston College, Fordham, Georgetown, Lafayette, and if you Drew, but most of the schools I've just mentioned have a Division I AA football team, which is who we would face in the spring. So we were always the small fries out there. Fairfield was always a smaller team. Yet we won more games than we ever lost. And we beat some pretty good teams. You know, it was very competitive. And part of it was because we had learned the game pretty well.
It was set up, I was the scrum captain, and you had a separate back captain, and you were in charge of running the practice beginning 10. And we just learned from the upperclassmen, so we kind of followed the model. We had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday practice. We did run that loop.
Yeah.
How many? How far
It's
is
about
that?
a mile and a half.
About a mile and a half.
And it was up a hill. So I would say that we're in pretty good shape. That was part of the routine. Then we do drills on Tuesday, drills Wednesday, and then Thursday was an all-out scrimmage. And the beauty of it, as we talked earlier, was then Thursday night, it was interesting to listen to the other guys. They had the same night. We'd have selections. You'd have myself and Mike Crowley, let's say the back captain. We would have Pat or Barney would always be on. Then we'd have 4 or 5 new guests each week, and their vote was just equal as ours. And there were no cliques, no buddy system, so that if you worked hard, had a good scrimmaging game, there was a lot of movement between teams, A, B, and C. And there was, but we also had a caveat: if you miss practice, you don't play A side, right?
Yeah.
There was no privilege system, and that was the beauty of it. And we had no adults involved. Very successful. We won more than we lost, and it was fair, right? No one ever complained about playing time because it was a selection of your peers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the credibility of the selection process was pretty transparent for everybody to see, and you know, and it's, you know, and it wasn't populated by seniors. I mean, there were freshmen, sophomore, and junior representatives at those meetings as well, which was great because then they get back and tell their brethren what goes on, and they're part of the education process too, and then they inherited it, you know, in your senior year.
And Paul Davis is mentioned
Yeah.
in '73. He would always be an honored guest. And if you had it, we had a lot at my house on the beach, and sometimes the next morning you'd be going to class and you'd find Pitt asleep on one of the couches.
I found him asleep in my
We
bathtub.
knew his schedule better than him. We'd go, Pitt, you got a 1 o'clock,
Yeah.
remember?
Yeah.
We're in
We
that
were in
class.
some of his
Come with us.
classes. You know, we had him for our senior year. I don't know how many of us were in the class, and we go and sit down the first class, and he looks around the room and proceeds to give a 5-minute speech on how he treats rugby players worse than he does regular students, and how the jig was up and we were screwed.
Well,
And that was it. I think I got a B+ in Pitt's class, and that was, you know, I thought I was very lucky to pull that off.
Yeah, he actually, I mean, to Pitt's credit, he was a very credible professor.
Oh, he's great.
Because, you know, as Barney mentioned, we had probably 20, 25 rugby players in that class, Western Civ. I aced the midterm, and I completely decided I didn't have to take the final because it was just a waste of my time. And he gave me a C for the course. And he goes, I should have failed you, but I don't want to screw up your graduation. Parents are coming up, and they want to see you do the walk. But, you know, there was no level of, you know, hey, you're catching a break because of a relationship, a very personal relationship we all had with him. I mean, he was very credible when it comes to being a teacher as well. And I think that part of that credibility certainly helped us govern the club.
And I know everyone has similar stories with Pitt, but I really believe our class was extra close to them. We stayed in touch with them long after we left school. When anyone came into town, we'd go visit them. When he got some award, we'd all show up for it. And whatever, when we got in trouble in our college years, he'd be there, representing us. To this day, we never know if it helped us or hurt us, but nobody was kicked out of school. So
I think it was more help than hurt. I mean, he always gave you some pretty good talking points whenever he had to meet with the administration. I mean, he couldn't go to the meetings, and frankly, you know, he's does work for the school at the end of the day. But he was pretty helpful on, you may not want to say that in front of this guy because it may misinterpret it the wrong way or something like
Years later, Hancho and I drove him up to Pat's bachelor party. I mean, that's how close we remained. So
we did a couple Sox games with him. He was a very knowledgeable baseball guy too. If you ever sat next to him in a baseball game, you got educated on baseball real good.
We practiced, Hancho and I practiced a couple of times down there, and then we moved up to Groward Field, and it was never a big deal, but we were all made aware of who Hans Grauer was. And so it was subtle, but we knew who he was, and it's pretty important to me, obviously.
It was it's the only true rugby field, dimensions-wise and everything about it in Connecticut, even in the Northeast at the time.
It was the first established in the country.
Yeah, exactly.
In a college.
Yeah.
Barney said, everybody knew who Hans Grauer was and the story behind the donation and everything. An American patriot, Notre Dame graduate, which for an Irish Catholic is always a good thing too. But the fact that, his brother and his mother were, very, very engaged with the administration of that field. It was dedicated to rugby. We were the primary tenants of it. It's a special place. And I don't think there was a school that came here that wasn't impressed by it. It's a great sight sitting up on the hill and watching the games. It's almost stadium-like. We actually tried. We had a meeting. This was 1980, 1981. We had an open meeting for, to gauge the potential for a women's club. We had some ladies show up. Never got it off the ground. It wasn't, wasn't that level of interest. And a lot of the women did come. We're fans of the club anyway. It was, we weren't pulling strangers out of the dorm for it. But I think it got people talking and thinking about the possibility of doing it. I'm glad it came to fruition. I think it's a wonderful thing. We would go to rugby tournaments to see women's rugby games at the tournaments. It was this one school, Cortland State. I think those women could have played us, and it would have been a close game. They were good.
The team now is good here at Fairfield.
The team now, obviously, based on what we're reading,
they're one of the best teams in the Northeast.
But I think it just shows a level of interaction and history of the club. It's just another phase of the history of the club, and I'm glad to have it, and I think it adds value. I got 3 girls. I'm not quite sure I would encourage them, but I wouldn't discourage them either. I think when you talk to them, they're going to take away just as many great memories of rugby that we did.
The best example I can come up with was the essence of the rugby experience. It would obviously be the inevitable transition to the party afterwards. One year, our senior year, we were playing Yale at Groward. And after the game, we went down to our house. Hancho and I lived at Castaways. And so these guys from Yale are milling about the house on the water with a couple of kegs of beer, just totally envious. They couldn't. Sergeant Shriver's son was on the team, and Pitt introduced me to him, and he said, "This is amazing. You live here? This is incredible." So specifically the Fairfield's experience, being able to live on the beach, being able to entertain the opposing team down on the beach was just, that was just the cherry on top of everything.
It was one reporter like that got me introduced to the sport and said, I got to get involved in this. Because, everybody knows that the social side of rugby is probably as important as the actual game itself. It was pretty easy for us to embrace that, frankly. But, we did have, Fairfield was always a good destination point for a team to play. Barney was match secretary. He always, whenever you made that phone call, oh yeah, they'd love to come. Seton Hall, Georgetown, you name it. They wanted to come here because they knew they were going to be showed a good time. They were going to be treated with respect. we're going to have some good games, and we're going to have some good social. You know, there were no, you know, that was basically it. You know, and then when you'd meet these people at sevens tournaments and other tournaments, you picked up right where you left off. I mean, it was great. Post-college, I mean, I've been to every 5-year reunion every year since I graduated. So, you know, it's almost 30 years ago. Fairfield rugby players have disproportionate attendance at those events. And I don't think that's a coincidence. There's a connection to the school 30, 35 years after that the average student in play doesn't have. You know, we're not Notre Dame or Michigan where you can rally at football games or the basketball teams play Madison Square Garden every week. No. You are still connected to the school because you participated in the sport. And you took it with you when you left and played club or maybe not played club. But, you know, the kind of people you met are the kind of people you still socialize with today.
I agree with what Pat Barney is saying. It's the friendships, not the wins and losses. I played then after college for about 6 or 7 years, club side, all around, you know, and at the Met Union. And the friendships that I have are the rugby friends are still current, and we check in and we follow our kids. And I'm fortunate enough, my son followed my passion for rugby. He plays at Fordham right now. He's a scrum player, and it's provide unlimited great memories. And the main thing being friendships, and then you watch your son go through it. And although different generation, you see the same neat stuff going on. You know, he has he may not be living on Fairfield Beach, but he's in a rugby house in the Bronx.
And we all played after school. I played for the Yankees with Chris, and then down in Allentown for years. So it's a game that continues on after school, which doesn't particularly happen with some other sports.
We hosted an English high school team, would have been the second semester of our senior year. At the time, Fairfield Prep was trying to establish a rugby club. It was really them that invited the English side over, but we were helping them trying to get their program running. So I think they had, you know, 10 or 12 prep kids and would fill in with 3 or 4 of ours. And the English kids came over, and it was funny, a different style of rugby because they were much better. You know, from a technique perspective, they kicked better, they rucked better. But the Fairfield Prep kids were, you know, most of them were ex-football guys, and, you know, it was more physical. And, you know, we won by like 3, but it was interesting because here are kids that are learning it in their formative high school years where we didn't get introduced to this to, you know, 4 years, minimum 4 years after that. I think today's team is, you know, you're getting people coming in here that have actually had experience with the game prior to arrival.